Hi, Cat Lady 762, and welcome to Transmissions from the Transgender Battleground. If you like this video, please hit the little buttons to like, subscribe, and even leave a comment. I do enjoy reading them, and I'd especially like comments that give me ideas for future videos. Today, I want to talk about some theories about either why people transition or what causes gender dysphoria. Specifically, I'm going to talk about HSTS, AGP, and ROGD. Now, if that sounds like a bunch of alphabet soup to you, a quick rundown of what those are. So HSTS and AGP are a typology uh, discovered or theorized by Ray Blanchard back in the late 1980s as to what would motivate trans women, males, to transition. Uh, and basically, he decided that there were two types of motivation. One, HSTS, stands for homosexual transsexuals. And kind of just like it sounds, those are trans women that are males sexually attracted to other males. And the theory was basically that they transition usually at a younger age, primarily because they are somehow naturally, innately feminine in mannerism, characteristics, and appearance. And it is easier to live as a woman than a obviously gay man, and it's easier to attract the object of their sexual desire, supposedly straight men. Now, on the other side of that, you have AGP, or autogynephile, or autogynephilia. And that's basically the idea that the males that are nominally attracted to women or are bisexual or what we now term as asexual really are not those sexualities, but instead have a fetish for basically the attraction of themselves or the idea of themselves as a woman. And so, basically they are transitioning to become what they sexually desire. Now, the third one I mentioned, ROGD, is more recent, theorized by Lisa Littman, rapid onset gender dysphoria. And this was kind of to explain the exponential rise in young females, teens, and young adults identifying as transgender. And basically the idea that this is kind of a social thing that either within online communities or within peer groups in person, that through exposure to other people identifying as trans, that these young females who never previously expressed gender nonconforming behavior or any gender dysphoria feelings suddenly are now saying they're trans. And I've seen a lot of discussion the last few days about these theories, and especially the fact that your trans activists and a lot of people within the trans community really don't like when you talk about some of these, especially AGP and ROGD. They will tell you, that they don't exist. That AGP isn't really a thing because all women can potentially be sexually aroused by the thought of themselves. Or the only reason rapid onset gender dysphoria feels rapid is because you don't actually know how somebody feels, that they, just because they haven't told you that they have had gender dysphoria for the last, 5, 10 years, doesn't mean that they haven't. And I will say that I do have some issues with aspects of these theories. One is, especially with the AGP / HSTS, there seems to be this idea that those are the two and only two reasons why a male person would choose to transition. I don't think that's true. Now, I certainly believe that there are people that fall into either of those categories. And to deny that there are is also foolish. But I also don't think it's exhaustive that you will fall into one or the other. Angus Fox is currently doing a lot of talking and writing about his interactions with the parents of young males that are now identifying as transgender that don't seem to fit these categories. From my understanding or my interpretation, basically they are identifying as trans because they don't feel like they meet some sort of idealized version of what a man is. So if you don't feel like you are a man, you must be something other than a man. Okay. I have my own personal theories on why some people may choose to transition. I see a lot of discussion online with younger trans men that I say that they are gay trans men. And I start to wonder how much of their desire to identify as a gay trans man has to do with some fictionalized version of what they think being a gay man is. Because one of the things that I tend to see is that there does seem to be some kind of fascination with a lot of people that are identifying as trans with Japanese manga and anime, which does tend to depict homosexual relationships, but they tend to depict them in somewhat stereotypical ways. I would say, kind of like an idealized version of a soft man. And so I could kind of see where if you, have some kind of idea that, maybe you aren't comfortable with, the idea of, masculine, manly men and, that the idea of a more, softer, gentler, feminine gay man might be attractive to you. The problem with that is that's ignoring the fact that no, not all gay men meet that stereotype. Not all gay relationships are like that. But I could see somebody, especially a young person, kind of getting ideas in their head like that. Now, I will probably do other videos going into some of this more in depth and my thoughts on each of these typologies. I just don't want this video to get too far off track. But the reason for this video is more to discuss the fact that the actual discussion of this isn't allowed now, which I think is a problem. Because if you don't allow discussion of it, you don't actually allow people to really get a better understanding of why they may be transitioning. Now, I'm not going to put any value judgment on why somebody may be transitioning. And I think that's part of the problem that we do have. And part of the problem we have is this narrative that AGP is bad. I don't think AGP is necessarily bad. I think that there are some bad people that are AGP. I think there are some bad people that are HSTS. I think there are some good people that are both of those. I think there are some good people that are ROGD. I think there are some bad people that are ROGD. More importantly, I'm concerned that if you don't understand why you're transitioning, you're not going to get to a point where you are actually happy with your transition, because you may not be actually addressing the issue that is causing your dysphoria. And that's why I think exploring and discussing this and not sweeping it under the rug is important. It's important, I think, for people to try to understand why they may be feeling this way. But the trans narrative is that you just are innately this. You don't have to have dysphoria. So you are just innately trans. Well, transition is a really, big deal for most of us, and especially if you are going to do so medically. And some of this stuff is irreversible. And it, to me, is very important for most people to have as good of an understanding of why they are seeking transition, what transition can actually do, and how that transition may actually help or actually not help their dysphoria. Because unfortunately, unlike what most trans people will tell you, transition can increase your dysphoria. And that's not something that just happens with people that choose to detransition. It's actually rather common for your dysphoria to increase once you have decided to transition. And the problem is, if that dysphoria does not eventually start to decrease again, you're really not helping yourself. The end result of transition should be feeling better. You should feel more comfortable once you've transitioned. You should feel more at ease, more easily able to function in daily life. If that is not the case, then you need to explore that. You need to understand why. And I'm not saying that you need to detransition. I am not saying that if you choose to detransition that is wrong either. I'm just saying that the narrative that people are given right now, that transition is the be-all and end-all, of treating dysphoria is wrong. Because if you don't understand where that dysphoria is coming from, what is motivating it, you ultimately are not treating it. But that's just my 2 bits. And just to be clear, I am not a psychologist. I do not have any background in social sciences whatsoever. So, don't take what I've said as, researched, peer-reviewed information. This is just, a layman's perspective on dysphoria and transition as treatment. So until next time, thank you.